And then I told Ryan, I'm like, I want to build this boat, that's my dream. And then he said to me, he goes, you haven't even sailed yet. Like, you don't even know if you like sailing. And I was like, true, And he said, there's two types of sailors. There's people that spend their life building a boat, and there's people that just get in a boat and go sailing. He was like, look, just try sailing first. And then, like, great point. And because Aiyana and I, like, when we first met, we were very keen to start sailing.
We were definitely the people who just went sailing despite having no preparation, no, like, common sense, like, very little, like, we knew nothing. And then we were just like, well, we better go sailing. Like, I was like, why don't you build the boat?
Welcome to the Water People Podcast, where we talk story with some of the most adept and interesting water people on the planet. I'm your host, Lauren Hill, joined by my partner, Dave Rastovich. For us, this is a place to exchange not just ideas and practices, but stories, experiential knowledge gleaned from the aquatic adventures that shape us. We acknowledge the Bundjalung Nation, the traditional custodians of the land and waters where we work and play, who have cared for this sea country for tens of thousands of years. Respect and gratitude to all First Nations people, including elders past, present, and emerging. Let's raise a glass to something bigger than just great beer. Meet Stone and Wood, a brewery that thinks big and acts small. Today we're in conversation with Torren, Martyn, and Aiyana Powell. You may have watched their recent sailing adventure film, Calypte. More than 1 million people have on YouTube. Calypte traces the year they spent aboard a borrowed 35-foot sailing boat together, learning as they went, finding plenty of waves along the way. But what seemed like an idyllic journey didn't really come as easily as they'd hoped. Torren is a free surfer from Byron Bay, renowned for his effortless style and adventurous, off-the-beaten-path, wanderlusty surf films with his best mate, Ishka Folkwell. Aiyana is officially from Santa Barbara, but grew up cruising the Pacific with her family on their wooden sailboat. She graduated from UC Berkeley in 2015 with a degree in environmental studies, and has been roaming remote corners of the planet ever since, from Iceland to Tasmania. Torren and Aiyana talk us through the happenstance of meeting, their time aboard Calypte, the trials of trust and communication at sea, and their newest adventure, starting a family together.
Welcome back. It is 2024 in the world of clock time, and the autumnal birds are singing, and I'm sitting here across the table from you, Lauren Lindsay Hill. What are we doing?
I can see nasturtiums overflowing from our little kitchen garden, turmeric, some deadly chili peppers. What are they? Habaneros. Yep, we have quite a few varieties. I've tried to make hot sauce with them, but they are just so volcanic.
Yeah, and there's no surf today, and that's why we're sitting down here doing this. And also because when both of us have been surfing lately, what usually seems to happen this time of year for the last 6 years is that people ask us if we're still doing this podcast. And my response is usually, yeah, it's funny you should say that. We've got a few in the back pocket, and we're just about to bring them out. And Lauren's working amazingly and in the trenches doing the hard yards, which I'm so grateful for, to make them listenable and enjoyable for people, and editing out all of my long-winded, silly things that I say.
All right, before you get too far with that. Yeah, we're back for our 6th season. It's gone really quickly. If you have been with us all along, then you'll know that we tend to release seasons 6 months on, 6 months off, drop an episode about every 2 weeks. And we do that to relieve any pressure of having to just make things for the sake of making. We love doing the podcast. It's such a privilege to sit down with people and hear their own stories in their own words. I feel like that's something that has often lacked in surf media. There's usually the journalist interpreting in his or her own mind and heart what people are saying. And so with the podcast, we can tear down that wall and let people just express their own, mostly stories from their own point of view. And that is what we like to focus on, not so much concepts, ideas, politics, although we go into all of those things. But really the heart of the Water People podcast is stories about the aquatic experiences that shape who we become back on land, and making a space where those life-changing experiences can be celebrated.
And you obviously really appreciate all of that. That's your motivator for doing this.
Yeah, it definitely is.
And you also have that enthusiasm when we end a conversation and we look at each other and we're like, wow, that was really cool. That was very enjoyable. Or, wow, I had no idea about X, Y, and Z.
I just am in awe of the power of storytelling. You know, how it works every time. Our brains are hardwired for narrative arc, for stories. We get swept up in them, and you can see how we're ravenous for them on social media. We're flicking, we're scrolling, we're dropping in very, very short form into other people's emotional landscapes, their stories, their experiences. But I don't think that those tastes are necessarily giving us the richness of story that something like a long form podcast can. And that's why I love doing this work so much. I wanted to ask you about your why. I've been preparing for a storytelling workshop that I'm hosting with Surfers for Climate in the middle of June. And so I've been researching and pulling together different materials to help people write out their own story. And I've been reading a bit of speaker, author Simon Sinek's work. He wrote a book, among others, called The Power of Why. And his theory basically is that we all have a why that underpins what we do in the world, especially our work. And it's fully formed, he thinks, by the time we're in basically our late teens. It's fully formed, and it's something that we can come back to for the entirety of our lives. A why that moves us, that motivates us, that propels us to keep working and being in the world in particular ways. And so I wanted to ask you, do you have a sense for what that foundational why is? Whether or not you agree with his idea, that's up to you. But let's entertain the idea of what would you trace your why back to? Why
would be, for me, I guess, earliest formative experiences in my life that just really seem to keep looping back. I don't know if that's the right way to frame it, but just kind of like patterns and character attributes that I just can't seem to shake. And so, you know, that is obvious to you, Lauren, and probably to people who have been listening to this podcast for a few years. But if you haven't, it's growing food, and that comes from my childhood in New Zealand and just a short period there living in the country, and the feeling of having a relationship embedded in soil and water and wind and all of the elements, and then being uprooted and placed on the Gold Coast and just not feeling that same kind of comfort. When I look back at being a young kid around 6, 7 years old, that's how it felt. I just didn't feel the same. Though at the same time, we then discovered the beach only 5-10 minutes away, and so quickly I discovered that sort of ill feeling, icky, unright feeling on land that I was feeling there in suburbia completely dissolved when I was in that liminal space, that space between spaces there, between ocean and earth. And so really I'm just in a loop since then.
Are we all just in a loop? And that's what
it's a great question.
That's what Simon Sinek's work brings up for me. And as I'm approaching middle age, I find myself asking a lot, are our adult lives just the product of trying to reconnect with wants, needs, and desires from our childhood? Are we trying to heal the hurts of our childhood? Like, what is the underlying why behind how we live in the world? What if we take the time to get really clear about that why all the time, every day, every week? What if we have this conversation with each other? And that's why I wanted to have it with you here right
fun.
now.
It's really fun to do. And I think we can see the expression of both of our whys through this podcast in the kinds of people that we get sitting on the other side of the table from us. And, you could kind of look at it like I'm asking the Jeff Lawtons and the Cyrus Suttons and these people who are growing and exploring that watery world and also the food growing world because of those loops of mine. And then, you have this deep need for story and this deep love of storytelling. And we spoke recently of your real need for that as a child, where you didn't have that many people around you who would give you much of a story about your family, about your roots or surfing, whatever it was. And so it created that craving, that desire for story in you that you still have to this day.
One of my earliest pets, my dog, she was a black lab. Her name, I named her Y. And I also had a
Lord,
white.
talk about
I
Luke.
know it's so literal. I'm such a cliche. I had an orange and white tabby cat named What? And so when I look back at my why, I think about how hungry I was for more about my own story. Both of my parents, I'm coming to understand now, were and are very closed about their own story. They weren't very generous with talking about their past and the past of their families. And I always wanted that. That was important to me. So I feel like now, gosh, I spend my life asking other people about their stories because I had this deep want of my own story. And often that hasn't been satiated. So I keep asking.
Wonderful. Well, I'm so glad you read that because it's a great question to ask ourselves. And it's clarifying in terms of just our own personal loops and preferences that we think we're in control of, but maybe not so much. But then also in regards to doing what we're doing right now, having conversations with people. This is the 6th season and we're starting with friends and new friends and people here and people from far away. A balance already of like storytellers, water people, growers, you know, social kind of champions. And it's so great that we get to do this.
Before we get too far, I just wanted to say that we're adding a few new layers to the Water People world. We're getting all the episodes up onto YouTube, so now you can stream on YouTube. I don't do that, but I guess other people do. So we'll be in that space in an audio capacity. We also have a newsletter going. You can sign up for it through Instagram, through the website. And also, more importantly, to celebrate the new season, we're giving away a bunch of wonderful gear from friends of the podcast. There's a $1,000 gift voucher for a Gary McNeil surfboard of your choice, a Patagonia Ulex wetsuit, a backpack, 4 $250 gift vouchers from Stone and Wood, shoes from Sanuk, fins from Futures, and some plant-based sunnies from Child Eyewear. You can enter to win any and all of those things by either subscribing to the newsletter or leaving us a review on Apple Podcasts. Both of those things help us keep the momentum of the podcast going. And speaking of going, where are we going today?
Nowhere. Absolutely nowhere. We're staying on the farm.
What we do best.
Which is, yes, our personal preference. Hermits within the forest of this beautiful place we call home. We have Torren, Aiyana and Naya living here, and it's been such a great experience for us being able to live on this incredible slice of land and open it up to friends and family. You know, over the last few years, it's been quite interesting because we've had floods and fires and COVID. And so it's
housing crisis.
Yeah, housing crisis. It's been amazing to be able to share a space with friends in need and family in need. And then also just, you know, with people that we really click with. And I think Torren and Aiyana are very much those people.
This place has been, I mean, Byron in general, Cavanbah is known as the meeting place. It has been a place where groups of people have intersected, coalesced, and gathered around fire for a really long time. And this land in particular, since I first arrived about 15 years ago, we've always had friends in tents out the back, way overstaying their welcome. But we've had to learn how to set our own boundaries with that. So yeah, we're just finding that life is generally more wonderful when you have people that you love around all the time in those day-to-day, everyday moments where you can just sit down and have a cup of tea without having to schedule and call and make plans. You can just roll into making sweet moments together. And we've been getting to do that with Torren, Aiyana, and Naya, getting to witness her birth here on this land. It was such a privilege, and what a privilege to get to spend time with Torren and Aiyana too.
Yeah, so when they came back from their year of living aboard Calypte, the boat in Indonesia, Toz and I were having a surf, talking out about boat things because we've both had multi-hull boat dreams for a few years, and every time we'd catch up it was mostly about that actually. And we were surfing together and he just mentioned how they were looking for somewhere to be and they were pregnant and wanting a nest space, and just so happened that our friends who were in that space were leaving very soon after that conversation, and Torren and Aiyana and little Bubba to be just slid right into the groove here on the farm. And that's just been so wonderful because I feel like Torren and I would just have so many similarities. It's just hilarious. Remember when they first were here, we would just sort of walk over the other side of the land and find that we were pretty much wearing the exact same clothing every day. And it was like we had prearranged a uniform for living on the land here. And then we would discover personality quirks that were, very much in line, colour creativeness or colour blindness, if you must, and just general preferences, a lot of similarities in surfing and things. And then having a partner that's from America, and then yourself and Aiyana also having environmental science degrees and histories in America and wandering surf rat stories and stuff. It's just so classic to feel kindred spirits with people really quickly. Yeah.
I love surfing with Aiyana. I love how feminine and graceful her surfing is. She's a goofy foot. I was really interested about that word. Do you know where the term came from? Goofy foot?
No idea.
Apparently, in 1937, Walt Disney made the very first animated surf movie called Hawaiian Holiday. And in it, the big dog, Goofy, surfs on an alaya at Waikiki, and he's standing with his right foot forward.
Wow.
And apparently, that's where the term goofy foot came from.
Yeah.
There's about 35% of us are goofy-footed. The rest are natural-footed. But I just thought, what a strange term to have stuck and lasted in surfing vernacular for so long for no apparent reason.
Yeah, I love you. You are the factoid queen. I had no idea you were about to come out with that when you said, "Do you know, Davey?" Nope. I thought that was the end of that. That was just the beginning. That was your little window, wasn't it? To blow my mind on a daily level.
I really like surfing with Aiyana, and I've really enjoyed getting to know her little bits over the last few months. She holds her cards close. She's a private person, and I really respect that.
Yeah, so the surfing world has celebrated Torren's surfing and also creative projects with Ishka and their films backed by Need. And it came at a time where I guess the surfing industry and dominant storytelling and sort of the dominant noisemakers being WSL and hyper-competitive surfing was really just dominating. It was just everywhere. And I feel like what a lot of people really celebrated and really loved about the projects Torren and Ishka were making and really just the adventures they were having. I think that a lot of surfers saw themselves in Torren and Ishka, because they were just slapping together a motorbike trip in New Zealand, or they were getting a van to do a Europe trip, which is something so many of us have done in Europe. And
yeah, what's more quintessential than packing up with your best mate and going on an adventure?
Exactly.
Like, isn't that what we all want to be doing
all
the time?
And it just came at the perfect time because it was just so disenchanting and boring and repetitive what we were seeing in our main storytellers in surfing. And so it's just what surfing needed was those guys doing that. And obviously it's Torren's surfing skill as well that's part of the celebration of what they're all up to. And, he is just choosing his own line, and his trajectory with surfing is very much like that too. He wasn't doing contests excessively as a young kid and then moving in the standard way of getting sponsors and having everything on a silver platter at an early age. He was in Indo doing odd jobs. He was in Sydney doing odd jobs, and then just started doing stuff and playing around with the camera at the same time and got a rhythm. And all of a sudden, here he is.
You often talk about how indicative surfing style is of people's personalities. What do you read into Torren's way of drawing lines?
Yeah, it's funny. I would say that, we live in Point Break area here. And so typically I'm like around the back and hiding from the crowd at like sort of deeper ends of the Point Breaks. And then Torren's doing the same thing, but at the other end. It's really, really funny. So we often don't surf together. And his approach is, I wouldn't say antisocial like mine is. I'm pretty much antisocial when I surf, but he's very much on the periphery. He really sits wide. He sits down the bottom of the point, sneaking waves, humbly, probably doing the best surfing out there, but just down the end where no one's really hooting and hollering and making a big spectacle of
He's
things.
not throwing elbows to sit at the pinnacle of the takeoff spot.
Yeah, he's just very humble. And then when he surfs, you can see it too. He's just very flowing and not forceful, but plenty of speed. There's a lot of determination in his surfing, just like his personality. He goes after ideas that he's interested in. He definitely doesn't just sit around, do nothing and wait for things to happen. And I think when he rides a wave, you can see that. He's very proactive and he's flying. He's got a lot of speed, but it's just not forceful. Very easeful way of being on a wave. And he's just the same on land. And Aiyana's the same. She's so quirky. I had no idea what her stance was for years because she does a lot of parallel stancing.
Yeah, she does.
And she's like in a squat parallel and then she'll stand up and I don't know, she's just got her own way of moving across the water, which I just love. And, seeing her swimming in wild waters down the south of Australia and just really following her own path in the water. And it's so great, that part of surfing, that it is such a window into the soul. It's such a illustration of our character without needing to be a good speaker and talk about it and tell you what kind of person someone is, just let your surfing do the talking.
There's
You look like you're ready for a DJ set.
I told you there's interpretive dance. I've got the song queued up. It's happening.
Yeah, I'm not much of a dancer.
Yeah.
Either.
Me neither.
Publicly,
That was kind of our...
that is like the most terrifying idea.
Public dancing.
Public dancing.
Yeah, that actually does
Really
sound
bad.
scary.
I think that was when you first maybe fell in love with me. We fell in love because neither of us wanted to get up and dance.
At this concert.
She's like, I'm so glad, like we're in the car snuggling later. She's like, I'm so glad you weren't up there dancing. Like, I'm so glad you're not a dancer. And I was just like, me too.
Me too. Oh my God.
You don't
At
mind a
Penong
public
pub.
boogie.
Yeah, I don't mind, but I just close my eyes so I can't see the look on people's faces.
Yeah.
So yeah, I
Everyone's
just
just like-
pretend like no one's watching. Yeah, exactly.
I think you don't really mind it either, but you weren't. No, I was happy you didn't ask me to go dance because the whole time I was going, I hope he doesn't make me dance. I hope he doesn't make me dance, and you didn't do it. And I was like, I think I love you.
Oh, yeah.
It's a pretty low bar.
It was, yeah. Doesn't take much, huh? It was at Penong pub as well.
Oh wow, yeah, you're not going to
Fire
dance there.
dancing at Penong.
It was really popping
You'll
off.
get beat up if you dance there, no matter
just
how
like-
good you are. Actually, the better you are, the more you get beat up. Probably.
Yeah. Need to be in there, just, I don't know what style of dance.
Yeah, totally. Yep. Oh boy.
Yeah, that was a bit of a milestone moment in our relationship, wasn't it?
Yeah.
that on the trip?
That was like 2 weeks into knowing each other, yeah.
Okay, so we always start these podcasts with the question, can you tell us about a moment in your life after which you were never the same? Was that the moment? When Torren didn't dance, you're like, oh, that's it.
It was.
Everything's
pivotal.
different from now on.
I was like, I found the one. I'm committed. There's no turning back.
All right, that's a wrap. Okay, 5 minutes
We're
and
done.
20 seconds.
Well
That's it. Let's
So
go
profound.
surfing.
I was like, we're both closed off to the world.
Actually, I can relate to that when we have our anti-social moments, which happen all the time, where there's something happening out in the world and one of us will look at the other one, like pretty much the internal dialogue is, please say we're not going to go. Please say you just want to stay home and like read a book or something.
Yeah.
And then that's pretty much what always happens.
Yeah.
Sometimes you're a little more outward than I am, but generally
Occasionally.
it's the both of us really loving the idea of just kind of staying in and
Yeah.
having a fire, reading a book or something. You know?
Yeah.
It is a nice feeling, isn't it, when you're like in it together?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Committed to hermitude.
Alone forever.
No one else.
Alone together forever.
I do love that.
It's a real thing.
It is.
Yeah.
To find someone you're willing to share your love of aloneness with, that's love.
I guess that's
Be alone next to you.
It's an interesting like paradox because you want to be kind of quiet and alone, but with someone
Alone together.
is so different. Yeah.
Like to find someone that you feel comfortable, you feel like you do when you're alone, but they're there.
Yeah.
It's rare.
Yeah.
And I feel like it's the marker of like, as soon as I met Torren, I felt like that too. Was it like that for you guys? Like you just like, you feel comfortable in their presence, sort of.
Sort of.
It's true though.
Yeah. 100%.
It's interesting.
Yep.
So we met a long time ago, almost 20 years ago now. But I started camping on the other side of the Rainbow Bridge. That's where I started living in the little, where that bigger tree is and there's like some timber tacked to it. I was camping on the other side of the creek there. And I would just come over to the creek cabin to like have food and stuff and just we'd trial like being in the same space together through the day. And then I'd go back to my tent at night.
Back across the bridge.
Until you didn't.
Until I did.
She came over, you booby trapped the bridge, there was no going back.
Sorry, flooded in.
Yeah.
Our introduction to each other's personal space is a bit different than that because Aiyana and I met in the surf, and then 3 days later we moved into my van together and drove across the country, and we were in a very close space together for 3 months.
Yeah.
And it was great.
Yeah.
Every moment of it.
Now, is that when I saw you all down in South Oz and Aiyana was swimming around in deeply shark-infested waters doing backstroke
With
and
no warning.
like just going, wee, this is so lovely. I was like, wow, this girl is wild.
That's what I would like
You're
to do.
ignorant.
That beach,
Is
that's
the
where
shark.
the submarine sharks are spotted, like the huge ones trawling out the back there. And so I was just like, wow, Torren, you got a wild woman there, man.
It was like first month in Australia, just like, woo.
So great. Wow, so that was it, yeah, it's thrown straight into it.
Yeah.
That was it.
Okay, before we get too far, as Dave said before, we always start in the same place by asking about a time or experience after which you were never the same, but since you're together here, maybe you can tell us about a time when you were never the same as a couple, a moment that changed you together.
That moment for me is pretty clear. And it
Is
was
Anaya being born?
absolutely, yeah.
Yeah, it's kind of obvious, isn't it?
Where were you going though, Aiyana?
I was like, there's,
You're like, this is harder.
well, no,
No.
but that was,
Yeah, for me, being a part of, that whole experiencing and witnessing your transformation and the depths that you went into and the whole magic around all of it was by far the most profound experience I've ever felt. And I guess, the connection like that we had and that whole, like it's almost a blur, but in the moment time felt so long and intense and emotional and magical. Yeah, that was such an incredible night and moment for me.
How was it for you?
it was pretty crazy. I mean, birth, after you do it, you walk around going, I can't believe everyone is born. It's so amazing. And we were here on the property just outside under the full moon with all of the eucalyptus trees, and the hot water went out. So Lauren was running buckets of hot water over. Torren had like every kettle on the stove boiling water so that I could have a warm bath. And leading up to birth, I thought I was going to want to be totally alone. And I had this vision that like I needed to be really internal and I wouldn't want anyone around. But when I was in it, all I wanted was Torren. And I just wanted to like squeeze onto his hands and just know that he was there. And when he was there, it felt so much less hard, which was a pretty amazing experience as a couple to feel like we were really in it together and he was really there to support me. And then at the end, we had Naya, and it was like, yeah, so beautiful. It was completely a life-changing moment.
Well, that's so interesting that you had that inkling before it for internal navigating, like getting through it just on your own in a way, but then it's switching. It seems like it's just such a unique experience for everyone. And it's so funny. We always, you just start a life of saying the cliches as soon as you have a child, I feel like. But it really is, isn't it? Like everyone's birth experience and then the child and all of us, we're all going through it in such a unique way. Like everyone's birth story is.
But it's
Yeah.
also,
So different.
it's one of the most humanizing experiences.
Yeah.
There's hardly anything. We all have birth in common, death in common, and if we're lucky, getting to birth our own children. It's like, just feels so deeply humanizing. I wanted to talk about how your birth was for me.
Yeah.
seriously, we were all there. We were all there.
I know. Having not known each other very well or for very long, the full moon was rising through the eucalypt forest, and I could hear Aiyana like riding waves of sensation, and you would get sort of loud and then go quiet. And I was just walking through the forest. Torren had sent a message like, "We're out of hot water. We're out of hot water." And I was like, "Okay, I know what to do." You were like, there's some big jugs in the van. Go get them. I was like, "Okay." So I was carrying like, I don't know, 15-liter jugs of water through the forest, just like so amped up on the high of full moon and birth and the energy around it. And the forest was just, I feel like there was no wind. It was
so
super
still.
calm.
It was such a calm night.
And there was insect sound. And then there was just this like primal rising of vocal song energy that was you, like bringing Naya into the world. It was so beautiful. It was so incredibly special to get to just be on the edge of that energy. It was so incredible. The land was preparing and welcoming Naya. It was so beautiful.
It really was. Like, it was just, yeah. The night was so calm and clear. And it was in the season of northerlies where like all the nights around had just been windy and
We had thunderstorms.
And it was like she just chose the day. That was perfect. Yeah.
Absolutely.
I love that you would say something like that. It was a season for northerlies and an understanding of the time that all that took place within.
Yeah.
And I think that can lead us to I guess some of the things Lauren has on her mind that she really wanted to dig in with you all. But I do feel like it's really great to just like share company with people who have an idea of place and like where we are and the importance of places, you know. And even though it can venture into the sort of the cheese ball world or whatever, where you start to talk about the wind and the seasons and things, it's real. Like
It's so
the feeling for you having that calm night among our windy season, skitsy sort of season, was a real thing. It meant something, yeah? Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah, it meant something. And even on a subconscious level, it was like my body, it meant something, you know, like it was the right time to give birth.
Yeah.
It's pretty amazing.
Yeah.
Lots of folks would have recently watched the beautiful film that you all made with Ishka Folkwell Calypte. Your very good mate, Ryan Scanlon, owner of Need Essentials, says that there are two types of sailors. Can you tell us what they are and which type you are?
This came about 4 years ago when I met a fella named Mick Carter down in Tasmania, and he introduced me to the Warham Design boats, which are a self-built, beautiful Polynesian-inspired catamaran. I fell in love with these boats, and I said to Mick, he built a 46-foot boat, and it took him 8 years or so. And I said, if you were going to do it again, what would you do? And he said, I'd build a 38-footer. And I was like, oh, that's it, I'm going to do it, you know, like. And then I told Ryan, I'm like, I want to build this boat, you know, that's my dream. And then he said to me, he goes, you haven't even sailed yet. Like, you don't even know if you like sailing. And I was like, true, you know. And he said, there's two types of sailors. There's people that spend their life building a boat, and there's people that just get in a boat and go sailing. He was like, look, just try sailing first. And then, like, great point. And because Aiyana and I, like, when we first met, we were very keen to start sailing, and background of growing up on a boat but hadn't sailed in your adult years. So, yeah, we just thought we'd jump into it and see if we liked it first.
Yeah, we definitely jumped in. We were definitely the people who just went sailing despite having no preparation, no like common sense, like very little, like we knew nothing. And then we were just like, well, we better go sailing. Like, I was like, why don't you build the boat?
Was it like that, given that you had experience as a little kid? How old were you when you were on your family boat?
Like 8 and under. So,
8 and under.
Or like, I was really small. So it wasn't like I had any
Yeah.
practical skills.
But it's deeply familiar. Like the experience is familiar, but you don't actually necessarily know how to do it.
Yeah, like the smells of like marinas and it's all like very comforting to me, and I've always wanted to be back on a boat, but I didn't know anything.
That's so interesting.
Yeah. When Aiyana and I first met, one of the first things we talked about was sailing, and you had the dream of buying your own boat to live on and cross the Pacific in. also having no experience, but I remember clearly talking to you about that and you were like, I'm going to do that. I want to do that. And I was like, wow, that is epic.
I find that really interesting because, you know, the stories you hear around, you know, our lives being guided by the first 7 years of our lives, you know, there's that one line about show me the 2-year-old, 5-year-old, 6-year-old, whatever it is, and I'll show you the man.
Show me the boy
Show
me the boy at 6,
all those
I'll
sort of,
show you the man.
Yeah, it's like there's a pretty common understanding that those first 7 years are so formative, you know, and I can relate purely just on the food growing level. I grew up a little bit in New Zealand before coming to Australia, and I have these really blurry, simple memories of being around odd-shaped carrots and on the back of utes at the farmer's market and people selling weird-looking veggies and stuff in New Zealand. And then I kind of forgot it for a long time, but always felt myself interested in that. And then it wasn't until we were on the land here a few years ago and we really started growing that I felt that kind of familiarity that you're talking about, marinas and that scent of boats and things. I felt the same thing through food.
I have many fond memories of opening Happy Meals and eating chicken McNuggets from McDonald's.
Is that why you just eat McDonald's every day?
I
now?
mean, that says it all about me, really.
Florida.
Way to bring it back down to earth, Lauren.
No, I can relate to that too.
But Hungry Jack's, hey?
Yeah. So,
You're in Australia. Okay. That's why we can edit. We have full control over editing, so say whatever you want.
We have some incriminating photographs of these two at a dubious fast food restaurant.
No, I can see that. I mean, you guys are going through that stage with your little man now. He's at that sponge age and you can see he's just absorbing absolutely everything.
Yeah.
I remember those years really vividly, traveling around Australia with my mum and her partner at the time. And he introduced me to fishing and surfing, which are two things that I love today still. And just simple things like learnt me to tie a knot that I still use every single time. And it just takes me back, just that. So, yeah, I feel like it's such an important time of your life. Like,
Yeah, so the boat thing of like you not being sailors and everything, there's a point to that, you know, that you all jumped on Calypte without that really forward experience of sailing, though you had a childhood of travelling and making do on the road and fishing and knots, you know, knowing knots and stuff, simple as that. And Aiyana's early times on the boat with her family were deep in your bones too. And I think that's just something to be mindful of, that it wasn't actually too much of a leap for you all to jump on Calypte in some ways, like in terms of the feeling in your belly, like the gut instinct that, oh no, we can do this somehow. Was it like that, or were you trying to convince each other that you could do it like through thoughts and things? And
It was a bit of both. Like, I think I had that baseline like sense of we can do it, and I was just pretty sure we could do it without putting much, and so I didn't put much effort in. Whereas Torren was like, I think we need to like study and like learn and put some work into this, and I'm like, no, it'll be fine. But it was that good balance because Torren had, I mean, moving onto a boat and doing what we did requires a lot of preparation and knowledge, and Torren took it much more seriously than I did, and I'm so glad that he did, because I probably would have been like adrift somewhere.
I'm still stoked.
Not still stoked. Like, I would be like sunk.
Yeah. That's a great partnership then, like to have that.
Yeah.
I think I think there was a lot leading up to that. Like, you're very confident and comfortable around the ocean. Your parents were very supportive, you know, saying that you can do it. You knew we lived in like close spaces together, which is another big one, and lived pretty like on the road and loved traveling. So I feel like, I mean, there was definitely the consequential side of it, and, you know, pretty serious, but we're both pretty adaptable. And
after watching the screening of Calypte at our local community center, there were lots of people chatting outside after the screening, and I can't remember who it was, but a guy said, a year spent on a boat, I reckon it's about right that all the good moments can fit into about an hour.
That is gold.
That is so gold.
I'll tell you a quick funny one. After
Yeah.
we were down in Lawn, and after the screening, I nicked out in the last couple of minutes to go to the toilet, and I was coming back out, and I heard a guy and his mate in the alley talking like, "Man, that film, that was epic, but I wonder how much they fought." Like, and I just had a cackle, like, it couldn't have all been roses. And I was just like, yeah, there were some moments, mate. I just straight up.
Because that's a
said
big,
that.
Great.
that's some intimate space. Like you think about in a house, if you want to go and like shave your bikini line or like pluck your nose hairs, I don't know, the things that you create your own little intimate space for. There's no place usually to do that, really. It's all out there for the most part.
You're within 35 feet of each other at all times.
Yeah, and not only within 35 feet of Torren, but sometimes you're in 35 feet of Ishka, Ryan, Drew, Torren, Ricky.
Everyone together.
Yeah, and they're all just like grubby men. And you're just like, whoa, I can't get off this boat. But, yeah, it's so like that though. The sailing experience is long chunks of just really like almost boring like drudgery, and then just moments of like pure terror, and then moments of bliss. But it's like everything is so elevated, and it's like, yeah. Like
Can I quote you to yourself?
yeah.
That's something everyone loves. Yeah. Quote me to me.
I'm like, what?
Depends if I meant it or not.
First, can you finish this sentence? Quote, "To be honest, the lack of physical exercise was the most challenging aspect of our new life aboard Calypte. I'm not thrilled to admit this, but I spent a lot of time doing squats on the deck." He said that was the most difficult part. And then you wrote in January of 2023, quote, "Allowing time to pass without resenting it has been for me the hardest part of living on a small sailboat. Of course, the logistics of it have been difficult. Learning how to sail, to read the weather, to react to things going wrong, to tie knots, whatever. None of that has compared to the slowness of time here. My ability to accept the moment remains fractional and odd. At least half the time I feel desperate to control my surroundings, to get off the boat. Often I want anything but to have to sit alone with my thoughts and the endless horizon. And I crave the distractions of life on land." I know you wrote this. It's so beautiful. But there are also times when all the challenges, the storms, the heat, and oil leaks, and tangled lines, and lack of food, feel not just okay, but like a wonderfully complete reality. There's nowhere else I can imagine being, and life is good. Do you remember what inspired those words in particular? That feels like such a summation of what it is to live a life on the water.
Yeah, that, I don't know when I wrote that, but I'm thinking about some of the passages where it's just really long days. It was so many long days spent without distraction. And when you're on land, you can go surfing, you can drive around, you can go for a run, you can do a million things to keep your mind occupied. But when you're just sitting and it's just this blue and everything's blue, you can't. There's nowhere you can go, and there's nowhere you can run from yourself.
What's the value of that? Why would people do that? Why did you do that?
Yeah, it's really transformative to be alone with yourself in that way, because you have to face whatever you're going through. And also living on the boat reminded me and taught me in so many ways that we're completely at the mercy of this living planet that we're on. Every day is shaped by the weather, and your experience is completely reliant minute to minute on whether it's windy or there's a leak in the boat or whether the fish are biting. And it's just this really not simplified, it's just this really real version of life that is so easy to be removed from in modern, the way we all live. And so to experience that was such a gift, and it was such a good learning experience, especially for us right before we became parents. I feel like it was the ultimate experience of learning that we don't have control and we have to surrender, and the boat has a mind of its own. The weather has a mind of its own. We really learned that, and now we have Naya who has a mind of her own. It was just this experience of, I don't know if that makes sense, but I don't know if that even was what I was writing about, but that's just what I'm...
It totally makes sense. Yeah. Can you imagine then doing both? at the same time. Like
we want to, but it sounds full on.
it's pretty interesting to see. Did you all come across any families with young children liveaboard boats when you were on Calypte?
We did.
We did, yeah.
Yeah. we
People pull it off, eh?
People do it.
Yeah.
I think it's going to be challenging because if the anchor's dragging or you're in bad weather or whatever, it'll be really stressful. But you're really removed from all of those distractions, so it's easier to be present with.
Yeah.
And
very
it'll be a
present.
bit of both.
Yeah, and I think for us, like starting off with the lack of experience added to the stress and intensity
True.
of it.
Yeah.
And I think going back onto the next boat, we'll carry that experience with us and that confidence, maybe. But I mean,
Let's hope that it's not just like,
Except it's completely kind of boat, a completely different kind of boat. Sorry,
yeah, and that's-
multi-hulled and all kinds of different stuff.
Exactly.
Yeah,
it's a hand-built
You
boat.
you never really get to switch off on the boat. And I think like you and I had very different experiences on different parts of the trip as well.
Yeah.
I remember for you, one of the funny because I wasn't there, but when I came home for a few weeks, Aiyana stayed on the boat by herself, and you experienced some of the worst weather that we'd had the whole year for days and weeks on end. But that was the time that you felt the most empowered and stoked and alive, right? Like that is some of your most memorable time of the trip, is it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
How did you pass the time? Or I remember you telling me you took a lot of wool or cotton.
Yeah. A lot of crocheting, making pickles, making bread, thinking about dumb stuff.
while doing squats the whole time.
While doing squat.
1001 and crochet another one. 1002 and
Working
crochet
on my
another one.
abs. I didn't really have a problem with keeping myself occupied, but the weather was really crazy while Torren was gone. And then that was where we saw that huge croc. So we were like, I was anchored in these mangroves. I was like swimming at night, chucking my food overboard and just out there completely by myself. And then right when Torren gets back is where we saw this huge crocodile that had just totally been like circling the boat and stalking. And I'm just like, imagine if he got back and I was gone,
Yeah.
eaten by the croc.
Yeah, that was scary.
That is scary.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know how other people have felt after seeing Calypte, but it seemed when we were walking out of the community centre, there was like two types of viewers or two types of audiences. There were some who were like, yes, and
wanna
there's
get on
some
a
who were just
boat.
like, there's no way I'm ever doing anything like that. That surf looked amazing, but still, nah.
Not worth it.
You know, and I walked out so pumped.
Yeah.
And I walked out so grateful that there's, a boat building project and process on the go in our lives.
Yeah, I remember you messaging
Yeah.
after that, God, I'm so pumped.
Yeah.
Yes, I'm so stoked we got this project
Yeah.
and this to look forward to. I want to go sailing.
Yep.
Torren, what I find really interesting about your story is your trajectory to professional surfing. A lot of young surfers who are really talented kind of get sponsored early on, and then they have kind of resources, clothes, travel on a silver platter. They're kind of handed lots of opportunities from a young age. And that wasn't necessarily true for you. You really stepping stoned your way to making a professional surfing life. Can you talk us through what that looked like?
Yeah, to become a professional surfer wasn't really my goal or ambitions young. I mean, sure, I had the dream, surfing and traveling, that'd be epic.
Yeah.
And as a youngster, did a few of the local surf competitions, the board riders and around the countryside. And because I was just paying out of my own pocket, because I was surfing with friends and wanted to do some competitions and travel with them. And then when the dollars sort of started adding up, I'm like, I'd rather be putting this money into a trip to Indonesia or Mexico or somewhere, go and surf somewhere new and experience a different place and culture. And, grew up sort of working part-time jobs and saving for travels. And then wasn't sort of till, I guess, my early mid-20s where I enjoyed filmmaking and photography and that side of it as well. So, and as Ishka's an incredible filmmaker and, a passionate photographer, and we'd travel as friends and he'd do a bit of filming and then we'd make a little web clip or something out of it. Slowly those trips got enabled where we might get a bit of free accommodation or someone might help us out to pay for a flight. And then I guess the films sort of gained a little bit more maybe popularity or whatever it was. That kind of, just kind of grew pretty organically and naturally I guess it wasn't till sort of my mid to late 20s where it became a career or
really-
even later. Yeah.
It really makes me think of you as like the people's surfer. Like it was because people, all of us, were so transfixed by your surfing and loved your surfing so much that the brands came. Usually it's the other way around. So many people who love and admire the way you live your life and the way you ride waves. And I think, yeah, just your story has been kind of the flip, the opposite of the way most surfers end up getting paid.
Yeah, I think, like you're saying, the kind of relatability to it. Like we've been incredibly fortunate at the Need Essentials. You know, the first time that we connected, Ryan reached out, starting a small wetsuit company and wanted to give us some petrol money for a trip that Ishka and I were doing around Australia back in 2016, 15. Yeah, they've been, like these trips that we've done over the last decade or so have all been, you know, dream trips that you want to do with a mate, you know. So we've kind of dreamed them up and Need's been so supportive of that over the years and just helped enable them. And we're not travelling, staying in fancy accommodation and sort of jet setting around too much.
Yeah.
You know, one thing we do try and do is give ourselves time and connect with local people and communities and places that we travel and spend the money like it's coming out of your own pocket, you know. So that's always been very important to us. And yeah, as Need has grown, we've all kind of grown together, which is, yeah, I guess quite unique in the surfing industry and
Definitely.
world. And
You've managed to keep that familial relationship sort of web in a way that most of the brands, the endemic surf brands, have grown so big and are so disconnected from the reality of surf culture and it being people that you know, love and respect that you're working with. And it seems like you all at Need have really managed to hang on to that.
yeah, absolutely. It's all kind of fallen into a perfect time and place for everyone where it's just flowed.
How do you manage the being watched and the documenting when you're going on these incredible dream trips and there would be the pressure, I can imagine, to document everything, to always have the cameras out, to be posting on social media all the time? How do you strike the balance between experiencing firsthand and making sure the job is getting done? That can be kind of tricky.
Yeah, so I think like the beauty about, like, as I mentioned before, like the trips that we do is we give ourselves time. Like in terms of the filmmaking side of it, often we will like, until you kind of get a few waves and kind of find some flow and the rhythm of just travel and adapting to living in a tent, traveling on a motorcycle or a boat or a van or whatever, it kind of takes a little while to slip into that stream. I don't know, Ishka and I are such close mates, you know, like we don't really document everything that's happening, you know, and as soon as we've got a nice day of waves, the camera will go down. Ishka will be surfing, we'll surf together. It's like, as you know, you get a little bit more footage. There's obviously not pressure, but like, yeah, you've had, you know, flights and travel is paid for and you have a commitment, responsibility there because you want to make something, you know, you want to document the trip. But yeah, it's certainly not every meal we eat and every single thing that happens.
Yeah.
So
do you just know? Do you have a sense for like, oh, this will be in the film, we should get the cameras out now? You've done it so many times now. I feel like you'd.
Yeah, for
be able to
example,
see
like
it.
the motorcycles, we're preparing the bikes. You know, that's a part of the story, an important part of the story. We're on the road. We're not going to film every scenic landscape or every corner we turn around or everything. You know, every camp spot. But it kind of happens pretty naturally. And Ish and I speak pretty much the same language, so we're just like, oh, that's cool. This session could be worth surfing and worth filming. Or let's just go surfing together. But yeah, it's often like you mentioned, like, getting watched and filming. Ishka loves filming when the waves are pumping. I love surfing when the waves are pumping. I don't know, that whole process and the trip, we're just having fun and we're traveling, and then it comes back to the post-production side when we get back after a trip and we kind of get to relive it through the editing stage, which is awesome too.
You end up with the best home movies you could ever.
Exactly.
want
It's kind
for.
of like chronicled our life as mates and travels, and I'm really grateful for that, to kind of look, you know, especially in another 10, 20 years and look back at it all is pretty amazing.
So special.
And then I think, like, yeah, sharing the film, it's kind of funny. I go, you know, like, obviously I love the idea of getting community and people together and, you know, watching a film when you're kind of in it. It's kind of a bit of a different thing because it's one way, like, yeah, it inspires and gets people stoked to travel, which I love traveling. But then it feels kind of like self-indulgent as well, and you're putting yourself in the spotlight, and then, you know, I kind of go between stages of just like not really letting that bother me, and it's all great, and then I'm like, oh, this kind of feels a bit weird, you know.
Can you tell us about a time when shit hit the fan, that felt like everything was failing, but that moment allowed for you to learn or gain something that could have never been possible had everything gone right? Because I feel like that's like the crux of travel, you know? Yvonne Chenard said, adventure really begins when things start to go wrong.
Yeah, I think most recent time was on Calypte, and we were preparing for our final leg of the trip, and we prepared the boat and ourselves mentally and physically for this 1,200-mile crossing from southern Mentawai to Lombok. It took me a lot to really mentally prepare for that, because we were really putting ourselves out there, and there were a few things that happened with the boat, particularly like oil leak, and we just had to provision everything and plan a lot further ahead. And I was really doubting
Losing it.
I was losing it. I was really doubting myself. Like, I knew deep down we could do it, but I just lost all confidence.
Why was that crossing especially confronting?
Well, it was from the southern Mentawais to Lombok, which is like 1,400 miles, and you have to choose if you're going to go along the open coast of Java, which is just like known to get smashed by weather, or go along the inside, which is like a lot of boat traffic, a lot of fishing nets. You just have to be super vigilant. And we were doing it in like one big go, so it was going to be 2 weeks of watches around the clock, and it was just a lot of big decisions. And Torren was like, we really having to make these decisions of like, are we going to make the call to do the open side where there's no safe anchorages and we could just get smashed, or are we going to go? And like it was
Yeah, there were a number of
Consequential.
consequential things, provisioning, fuel, no kind of backup. But I remember like
oil leak.
What are the quotation marks about?
Torren was panicking about this oil leak, and I kept saying, I think you just overfilled the oil. He's like, there's oil splattering all over the engine. And I was like, I think you just overfilled the oil. Like, you just put too much oil in there. And he was like, no, like, this is a leak. Like, we have to get this leak fixed before we can go. And anyway. And then finally we found like some mechanic guy, and he came on the boat, and he was like, I think you just overfilled the oil.
Okay, there is
Still
truth to
maintains
that.
there was an oil leak, but we never found the oil leak.
Did
I
you
still
pay
cry.
that guy to say that, Aiyana?
No.
Did you give him one of your crocheted scarves or something?
It was just all happening at once, though, and we were just getting like smashed by weather, but we were arguing a lot. We both got the flu, and then we were just like, whoa, we've been on the boat for almost a year, and we have this crazy passage to do, and it was like...
Head sail was torn. There was a kink in the rigging. There was just a few things that were obviously accumulating.
Yeah.
But I'd basically like reached out to a few skippers and friends, sailors, saying, hey, kind of calling for some help here. Like, it would take a massive weight off all of our shoulders if we just had someone else that was...
One or two people, so that your watches could be shorter and you could get more sleep. And I was like, we should bring more people on the boat. And we were arguing about it. Torren was like, I think we should do it ourselves. And it was just all of that.
But yeah, it got to a point where we were like, we'd love to have someone that can help us and give us the confidence. And then that didn't happen, and we left. And I remember like once we left, this massive weight just left us, and we were like committed to it. And then when we got there, it was just like the most like, how is that like triumphant? Like, we did it. Like, and that you asked the question, like, has there been a moment where shit hit the fan and then you felt like it was better afterwards? That for me, like for sure, that was the most biggest accomplishment mentally and physically of my life. That was traveling.
Wow, confidence booster in that world
Totally.
too, yeah.
And learning to live, like, it taught me a number of lessons, learning to live with things not always being okay, like, especially on a 45-year-old boat, you know. And I think that, as you were saying earlier, like, living in that environment on a boat where you're not in control of, you know, the environment, the weather, everything around you is, like, one of the biggest things about accepting and just sort of, letting go.
Aiyana, after watching Calypte, especially the little film edition on the end when you were pregnant surfing with Naya in your belly, that just left me with such tears. It was so beautiful and real. And I just left the theater thinking, I want to hear more from Aiyana. Like, where's her voice? And so I'd love to hear a little bit more about your story. How did you end up in Australia?
I was just here on a quick holiday. I guess I came and bought a car and was driving up and down the coast surfing by myself. And I was in that like phase of life when you're not sure what you're going to do.
Had you finished studying?
I'd
You went
finished.
to
Yeah,
UCSB?
I went to Berkeley.
Oh, yeah.
And then I'd graduated a couple years before, and I was just working lots of like farmers markets, doing environmental education jobs, like trying to figure. I wanted to work doing something environmental, but I was just trying to figure out what. And and then
Oh, little lady.
yeah,
You're doing amazing, you two, by the way. I understand how hard it is to have your heart be tugged every time your baby cries and you're trying to focus on something else. It's really challenging. You're doing amazing. Aiyana, at university at Berkeley, you got to study under the great Michael Pollan.
yeah.
How was that for you? And were there any major takeaways from his work and his teaching?
It was amazing. I mean, going to school at Berkeley was incredible because that was part of a lecture series where Wendell Berry was speaking and like, yeah.
I didn't know that.
Yeah. Like,
oh my Lord.
Like, or just like
Wow.
anyone who is influential in whatever field you're interested in. Berkeley was you have
Wow.
access to
Wow.
that. And so I was really lucky to get to go to school there. And I was studying sustainable agriculture and agriculture systems. So the big takeaway was probably that it matters where your food comes from and localized, small scale community food production is really, really important on like every level, environmental, political. And so what you guys are doing is really important. What everything we eat and every meal we have and share impacts the world around us.
Does it translate easily, having gone to school in the northwest of America and then now you're on the east coast of Australia, on the other side of the Pacific? Have you had like moments where you just see the same sort of issues, the same sort of opportunities or solutions here as you saw in Berkeley, which is San Francisco area? Is that what it is? Yeah, like does it translate? Are these just like human issues? They're not just necessarily like cultural or territorial, but just human nature issues?
Yeah, I think so. I think land use right now is one of the most important environmental issues, and environmental issues are just issues because we're all on Earth, and to redesign the way we grow food would have a profound impact on everyone everywhere because
You wrote part of your blog from Calypte, quote, "The popular language used by environmental groups fundamentally misrepresents what it means to be alive on Earth. Campaigns are full of phrases instructing people to, quote, use less, quote, minimize your impact, or reduce your footprint. Built into this language is a false dichotomy between us as humans and nature as something else." I really appreciated the way you wrote about reimagining what environmental movement looks like and feels like and is like in our day-to-day lives.
Yeah, I think that there's something so exciting and hopeful about thinking of ourselves as these like creative beings on Earth, and that we can do stuff to actively help each other and help create a world where everyone is thriving. Which isn't to say that we shouldn't try to consume less and do these practical things, but just to restructure the way we're thinking of environmentalism. And we can just think of ourselves as creatures on a planet. And
There's this narrative that we're, as a species, we're like some aberration. We're like this mistake. We're like an evolutionary mistake. And I feel like that story holds us back so much from realizing our reparative potential. And I feel like that's how you all live, the way you travel through the world, the way you're raising Naya is demonstrating that. It's really beautiful and inspiring.
Yeah, I think that it's really exciting that we all have the potential in our lives. And I don't know exactly how I'm going to do it, but we have the potential to be a positive change and like create beauty and help each other and help other species. really amazing to be human in that way.
Please stay tuned while we take a quick break to acknowledge the folks who help make our podcast possible. Let's raise a glass to something bigger than just great beer. Meet Stone and Wood, a brewery that thinks big and acts small, right from the heart of Byron Bay. Stone and Wood isn't just about brewing beer, it's about building a community. Certified B Corp and driven by environmental and social responsibility, they're all about making a positive impact one sip at a time. Their philanthropic arm, the Ingrained Foundation, supports local grassroots organizations, channeling funds and volunteer hours straight into the communities they call home, focusing on environmental and social causes close to the heart. Here's to Stone and Wood for crafting exceptional brews and for making a tangible difference in our Northern Rivers community. Patagonia is in business to save our home planet. Founded by Yvonne Chenard in 1973, Patagonia is a surf and outdoor apparel company based in Ventura, California. As a certified B Corp and a founding member of 1% for the Planet, the company is recognized internationally for its product quality and environmental activism, as well as its contributions of nearly $230 million to environmental organizations. Patagonia's unique ownership structure reflects that Earth is its only shareholder. Profits not reinvested back into the business are paid as dividends to protect the planet. Futures makes the first surf fins from recycled fishing nets. Alpha Net Plus is an innovative collaboration between Futures Fins and Borreo, blending carbon and discarded fishing nets. To date, they've transformed more than 35,000 kilos, that's about 77,000 pounds, of discarded fishing nets into new Alpha fins at their headquarters in Huntington Beach, California. Nets that would have otherwise ended up in the ocean. Made for high performance and tested by the best, from our very own Dave Rastovich to friend of the podcast, John Florence, Alpha is available in a wide range of fins for those who want to make a difference with every wave you catch. Learn more at futuresfins.com. The best summer surf seasons go hand in hand with fried eyeballs. Looking perpetually red-eyed might be an indicator of good times, but it also hurts. Good sunnies are non-negotiable, but ours inevitably get jumbled in the beach bag and the lenses get shredded by sand. Child, that's CHILDE, Eco Eyewear reimagines the way we use sunglasses. Instead of tossing out frames because of scratched lenses, the Child for Life program offers free lens replacement up to 12 months from purchase and for a small fee thereafter. Child makes sunnies and prescription glasses from plants, not petrol. It's eyewear that's made to last and able to be repaired for a smaller energy footprint. Let's reimagine the culture of disposability together. Learn more at childeyewear.com. Torren, I wanted to ask you about risk and how your appetite for risk, how do you feel like it's changed since becoming a parent? Has it changed? Like, do you feel like you want to travel in the same way that you did before, or do you think things will be adapted?
A little bit of both.
Yeah.
I feel like that massive weight of responsibility and that protective instinct, you're not just thinking about yourself, obviously, there's a huge responsibility there. I think, Aiyana's antsier than ever to travel too, which is a massive part of it. And I know how adaptable Naya is, and she feels like just a product of her environment and thrives in sort of every condition. So yeah, absolutely. Like, it changes things and the way you travel, but that will certainly still be a big part of our lives.
What you just said is such a paradigm shift for most people and how they think about their babies, though. Maybe you don't realize that, or you don't think about that because you too are so adaptable and you've lived in such flexible ways. I want to say the majority of people who have a baby in the US or Australia, probably Europe too, get sucked into, and it's so easy to get sucked into this obsession with routine and sameness and blackout curtains and like timing and schedules. And has that not been true for you?
Not at all. Our lives have very little structure and routine in a good way, I think, and it may be in a not so good way as well. Like, that would be nice. I know I wish that I could be a bit more structured and, have a bit more routine in my life, and maybe that would be really helpful for Naya. She seemed happy, and we kind of, I don't know, it's just, yeah. It is definitely, like, Aiyana and I are very similar in that way, where she can kind of spend a lot more time concentrating and kind of does like a little bit more routine and structure at times, where I can be
Yeah.
a little bit scatterbrained and want a little bit of everything, be here and there and everywhere.
Yeah.
But I want that more for myself and our family too, because I think that is important.
What captured your heart and your imagination about Aiyana early on and now that made it possible to just move into a van together after 3 days? Like, that's exceptional.
Yeah, Aiyana's like spontaneity, her like thirst for adventure and her willingness to just say yes and drop everything. And like when I first met Aiyana was in the surf, so there was obviously that deep connection straight away in the ocean. And then, we just spent a few days together. I just bought this van and I was planning to fly over to West Oz to see a friend that was living over there. And we were just kind of laying there on the grass after having a swim, and I just sort of thought out loud and said, what about we drive over to West Oz? And she was like, well, I'm supposed to be flying home next week, but I could cancel my ticket. And I was just like, wow, like, cool, let's go.
Was there immediate chemistry? Like, do you think she would have said that to anyone she'd met?
That is a great question. Maybe we should ask her that.
Hell.
No, of course she wouldn't have.
No, I'm special and it was just me no way.
How are you supposed to respond to that, Lauren? These are the sort of the questions I field every day from Lauren. Do you need some help?
Yes.
Do you need some help there to answer that? Yeah.
Well, Aiyana called her mum going, this guy in Australia, and she was like, oh my God, do it, go. So
Awesome.
Dory.
that was, Dory.
Yeah.
We can thank Dory for that one.
Oh,
That's great.
it is. It's so sweet. And it's such a two paths kind of moment where life could have been completely different had you chosen to go home.
Yeah, our whole relationship has been a little bit like that, where Aiyana's been very adaptable. Well, I've had a lot of the freedom of time and travel, being able to do that with my lifestyle and job. But Aiyana, in between that, in those first few years, worked very impermanent, part-time jobs, trying to scratch coin together. And I'd be like, hey, let's go down to Mexico. There's Little Swell. And she'd be like, just drop the job that she picked up because she wanted to travel and surf, and then pick up another job, and we'd get all excited about going somewhere else. So it was kind of like she was always been very flexible and willing and wanting to kind of do that, live that kind of life as well.
She's such a reserved person in some ways, I feel like Aiyana holds her cards close. I really respect that about her. She's not quick to put herself or her story out there. So I know, I don't have to ask you, but I know that there would have been some incredible, deep, trusting and bond between you to have allowed her to jump into a van with you. To drive across the country, right?
Yeah, I think so.
What does the pinnacle of success look like for you at 35? Aiyana, you are
30.
30.
I'm about to be 31. He's about to be 34.
Cliche, but the first thing that comes to mind is a happy family and happiness in that family.
She's happy.
That was the cutest, yeah.
Yeah, and I guess just and balance, trying to find that way in the modern day.
Aiyana, I wanted to hear a little bit more about your early surfing life. When did riding waves become part of your world?
I surfed when I was a little kid.
Off the boat?
Yeah,
Was surfing part of your life on the boat?
my parents weren't surfers, but we were in the harbor in Santa Barbara for a while, and I would could go to the sand spit and stuff. So I would surf when I was young, and then I stopped surfing for junior high, high school, and college. I would surf every once in a while, but I wasn't a surfer. And then after college, I decided I was going to become a surfer. And that's when I really started going all the time again. But yeah.
You had a similar time too, didn't you? Really, when you went to uni.
Yeah, I didn't really surf at all when I was at university. I was just focused. But I was 30 minutes from the beach for those 4 years. And I just swore I would never live that far from the ocean again. It's way too far. It was very clarifying. Not surfing helped me understand how much I wanted surfing to be part of my everyday.
Yeah.
You agree, hey, Naya?
Yeah. Surfing.
I asked Torren this before, Aiyana, but how do you feel like parenting has changed your appetite for risk or your relationship with risk?
my brain feels like I'm a completely different person. I'm just constantly looking around. There could be a brown snake in those bushes. I could trip and fall off the bridge. I could do this. I could do that. I'm just like, whoa.
The scenario playing is real, though, isn't
The
it?
scenario playing is very real. I think it's really common, especially in early postpartum, and you don't really talk about it that much, but you suddenly just become aware of all the danger because you have this precious, precious creature.
Those are the daily ones. What if you think of the bigger sort of adventures, though? Because we've heard you talk about doing big walks and stuff in Australia, and those walks happen in prime tiger snake country and stuff. Like, there's risks with that. What about that? Do you see those adventures still in your future?
I think that we definitely see those adventures in our future. We definitely want to move back on a boat and still do lots of fun things, but just I guess we're going to have to be a little bit more prepared and just think things through
Yeah.
more. But I mean, there's risk everywhere. It's definitely, I'm just going to have to relearn how to work with this new brain that's a lot more conscious and everything that could go wrong, but still do all the things that we want to do.
You wrote as part of your journaling, quote, "There is no possibility of adventure without giving up some element of control and putting your fate in the hands of others. Sometimes this translates into letting a resourceful local mechanic take a hammer to our anchor winch in order to fix it. Sometimes it means inviting a friend on board to teach us about reefing or navigating or how to repair a leaky stern gland. Sometimes it means accepting that I have no income and need to rely on Torren and his sponsors to support us financially. Aboard Calypte, we have to believe that strangers will be helpful and gracious, that the world is less scary than it seems, that the risks are worth it. For me, this is not always easy. I've never been good at reaching out, at trusting others, and I loathe feeling dependent." Do those feelings still stand? Or how is parenting stretching you in those ways? Independence.
That totally comes back to that thing we were talking about at the beginning where I thought during the birth I was going to want to be alone. And then in the throes of it, all I wanted was Torren. It's just that continuous process for me of like learning to open up and reach out. And
Definitely opens up your social circles too. I know that for me, I've pretty much chosen for many years to just be in my garden or in the ocean, and I typically surf alone and surf in corners where I can be alone. I don't really seek out a lot of big social moments. But then having our little fella Minnow, who's 6 now, and he has friends at the little Steiner school that he wants to go hang out with, and he wants to catch up with them at the beach or go to their birthday parties and do all these things. And it's been really wonderful to have just like a natural way to start hanging out with other people. And I think, that'll probably be true for you all as well, where they just force you to do that because you see how stoked that little creature there is when they're around kids their age and out in the world in that way.
And Naya already feels like she's very spirited and not shy. Like, I don't know if we're putting that on her, but she definitely thrives with more people around.
Yeah,
and
right.
It's going to push us into a whole different lifestyle.
It's kind of cool though because you don't have to try.
Yeah.
I guess that's what I was trying to say before. Is like, I don't know, I probably wouldn't go out of my way to be social most of the time, but then just because Minnow's like pulling us along to things, then it's like actually they're really great times and we're hanging with people who are interesting and do different things to us, and it's a really nice easy way to sort of broaden.
It's this new phase in life which almost like school or something when you're thrown into a situation with people who you wouldn't normally be around and you broaden your horizons. I feel like we've already experienced it. It was like the first time we went out with Naya as a newborn, people were like coming up to us like, what kind of stroller do you have? They're like asking us all these parent questions, and we were like, whoa, like we're part of a new club now. Like, people are talking to us. People don't normally talk to us on the street. But it's true. I think that she's already opening up our world so much.
It's funny how in our cultures, the push generally is toward isolation and like hermitage and being in our own little boxes in front of our own little screens, separate from other living, breathing human beings, except for maybe our nuclear family. But having a family of your own is this next opportunity to sink roots in and connect and build compassion for people who are in a similar season to you that you might not, that you probably never would have spoken with otherwise. You just are all thrown in, like you said, Aiyana, like at school, you're all thrown into this season of trying to do a similar thing. And so you reach out and connect and try to do it together sometimes.
Yeah, I think it's cool that, you like people that you don't normally think you have something in common with, for example, and then all of a sudden you've got a lot to talk about. You're going through the same life experience, which is quite big of an experience, and you can share stories and experiences like that. It's cool. I think it's cool to connect with complete strangers like that, and from as simple as just like, seeing another little baby and wondering how old they are, or how it's all going for them and each other.
A lot of water people look up to the both of you for inspiration when it comes to living adventurously. Whose lives do you look to as a template for an adventurous life? Or who inspires you in that space?
I remember back in the day kind of watching films by the Leyland brothers and Albie Mangles, who'd had some epic adventures across Australia and the world, I thought that was pretty cool. And then, some of those kind of Peter Troy as one of the early surf adventurers, epic. Yeah, just kind of the desire to travel is, keeps the drive and dream alive. The world, it's just a massive world out there and so much to experience and explore,
Yeah.
I loved when you all talk about the people you'd come across when you're on the boat too. Yeah, that you had some encounters with people that were living some pretty brave lives through the sailing community.
Yeah. Oh, we met this couple that were living on one of the islands in Indonesia, and they had 2 twin boys. It was an American and an Australian couple as well, and their twin boys were, I think, 3. They could already pull start the dinghy and drive the dinghy around. All of their make-believe games were like, we need more Benson, the engine's broken. And they just speak a mixture of Indonesian and English, and it was just so cool to see kids that were just so adept and real life experience, and they were so there.
That's so great.
We
really
so underestimate them. I have a feeling that our cultures are super condescending when it comes to children and what they're actually capable of.
Yeah, I know.
We have a machete to give to Naya for her first birthday.
I keep thinking that about Minnow. The conversations you have with Minnow, I'm just like, wow, he knows so much. He's so smart. He's teaching me things. It's amazing. And you forget when you're not around kids how much they know.
Yeah.
I got some friends like that have from a young age spoken to their children like adults. And at the start I'm like, it's kind of weird, but then you see the kids grow and they've learnt so much from a very young age and not been so babied, I guess, you're like, wow, such little sponges and so intelligent and, aware and there.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, right now, speaking of that, I think the thing that Minoa is the most obsessed with is building a boat and the idea of building a boat and adventuring out into the world via the oceans. Should we go there? You want to talk about that in any way? Is there anything that comes to mind for you when you think about this idea?
Yeah, starting off with, at that age and seeing him, and the excitement around the dream that we all have about this boat that we're building here on the property. And then imagining Naya as well in another few years and us all having these epic adventures. I think it's just such a really special and important age and stage of his and their life too, and those dreams, and sharing that together. You must feel just such a deep connection and excitement too when you were telling me stories of, driving to school the other day and you're talking about dreams you're having of sailing the boat, and that is just a fire inside, all of us, but I think that's...
We really see it with the kids' lack of filter. They just tell you, and he just tells us, he's like, I really want to help with the boat. what can I do that's going to be important? You know, and it's so great. It's like real. It's really real for him and for all of us. And that dream is, to build a warrum, a Tiki 30. Yeah. And, you know, one of the hulls is sitting there over in our very rustic shed that we slapped together that's as wobbly as a cardboard house. But the dream is to make this James Warrum design Tiki 30. And I'd had my heart set on like trimarans the last few years, dreaming of these different types of trimarans to be able to do ocean crossings, but also go into really shallow water areas and beach the boat if you needed or wanted to, or go into lagoons that other boats couldn't access because you go into such shallow water. But then I couldn't find anything that wasn't $1 squillion, and we don't have $1 million to spend on a boat. And then you came up with the idea of just building one of these warrums. And it took very little convincing to get me on board with that. Especially given the philosophy behind it, that these are boats that are made, you know, you don't need excessive amounts of money. You need time and the willingness to learn, and hopefully a community of friends and people to join in. And we just happen to have those things. We have time. We prioritize having time in our lives, and we have lots of friends who want to help and a space that we can build it in. And so that's, I guess, where we find ourselves now, getting that ball rolling, just starting to feel the momentum, hopefully starting to like build with the build.
Remains to be seen what kind of sailors we are.
Yeah, well, that's the thing. I think, but it makes me think of that line, the way you do anything is the way you do everything. So, you know, the way we navigate the ocean through swimming and surfing, you could really look at the way we're going to sail and navigate that in a similar way. You know, we've had adventures on the Hobies over the years and felt how to traverse coastlines and river mouths and semi-treacherous locations and, you know, just dancing and playing along that line of risk and risk assessment, not being risk averse, you know, just assessing what the risks are with a scenario, rather than just being like, oh shit, this is risky, I'm not doing it, let's get out of here, you know, which makes me so excited about this, where you will be learning through the build and then applying, a lot of ocean knowledge, but through a different medium, through a multi-hull.
Yeah.
And largely through sails. Like this, you know, you got a tiny outboard on these boats. It's only just there to park the thing in marinas and stuff, essentially.
Yeah.
You know, the idea is to be really sail dependent.
What's the dream for the trajectory of the boat? Where's it going?
Yeah, I mean, I guess going back a little, like Dave, you and I have connected through surfing, probably known each other, you know, never really spent a whole lot of time together. But what I love about, you know, this boat project, I mean, we'd probably started connecting more through sailing, you know, like the idea and dreams of sailing, I think was when we kind of, you know, those dreams that we shared. And
just recently? Has that just been
in the
recent?
last couple of years.
Yeah.
And then I think, you know, what this boat, the idea of building this boat and the dream of sailing the boat, I feel like that is common within the sailing community. Surfers, I think we can feel quite, I mean, it's selfish in a way, but it's very personal. And then what I found through my sailing experience is people really come together and help each other out. And like, I love the idea of that becoming a massive part, naturally it will, of building this boat and sailing this boat. But yeah, I mean, already it feels like the community and people are coming together, and, you know, you're connecting with people that may not be surfers either, and bringing these different skills and ideas and things to the table, and just the process of learning and starting something new, you know, for all of us. The skill of building and doing that is totally new to me. Sailing is new to both of us. And having this, you know, this boat as a, you know, a vessel to, kind of live out some dreams and go to some rad places and introduce sailing, you know, to other friends as well. And I know you've recently connected, or you've been connected for a little while, with the Citizens of the Reef crew, which are doing amazing work up on the Great Barrier Reef, but they're spreading out over to the larger Pacific. And I think taking, you know, kind of joining forces and being supported and supporting what they're doing is just an amazing branch of this as well, and feels really natural, and like it's for a good cause. It's not just a selfish sort of act as well of wanting to build a boat and go sailing. But I've got dreams of, I'd love to, when we launch it, to sail north following the whale migration up to the Barrier Reef and start island hopping around. And I mean, it's a very capable and seaworthy boat that's, capable of crossing oceans and sailing around the world. There's no limit to where it can go at all.
If it floats.
That's exactly what Aiyana said the other day.
One step at a time, right?
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, 100%. Yeah. To me, it's just surfing on a larger scale, and it's like, applying a lifetime of moments that all of us, we're all water people in our own ways within this group. And I just love that there's a really long lineage all over the world with people who ride waves also being deep water specialists as well. And understanding and reading the ocean in that way. And it makes me think of like some stories you hear of the Calypte family in Hawaii on the west side of Oahu talking about their favourite type of surfing is canoe surfing, because you're in one boat with your friends, and when you make a wave, you make it all together, and you just are hooting and screaming and whistling and so happy. And when you get pounded or when you fall or the canoe flips or whatever, that happens all together, and you're just laughing and having a great time. And so I think this is of a similar nature, I can just see us all sitting on this tiki and the sails cupping out full of beautiful wind and water streaming down the side of the hulls, and just, surfing out to sea, but all being there, like in it together in that same sort of nature as those amazing water people in Hawaii talk about.
For me, it's such an act of, building the boat, dreaming up, sailing on this boat is about doing justice to parenting too. Like showing, not just telling, like showing Naya and Minnow what it means to love an ocean, what it means to be part of a living system, to be part of a community, to keep your wonder for the beauty of the world, to be able to start with nothing, to start with a pile of timber and build something that not only floats but can take you across an ocean. Like, I don't know. That's the kind of parent I want to be.
And having that dream and working hard towards it.
Yeah.
Yeah, not just doing it, buying it or
Yes.
I think that,
with your hands, we can build incredible things. Like
we
Aiyana
don't know
was
how to,
talking
but we will.
My hands
That's
don't know.
I love that learning process. It's
Yeah.
like we don't know, but we're going to learn and we're going to do it. We can do it.
Yeah.
There's a website that Torren's been working on. Dave, you've been working on?
Me? No.
I mean, you've been looking at Torren's work, I should say.
We just made scratch together a bit of a website.
What's the website?
I think it's just going to be thegannet.com. So the Gannet is, the name of the
Oh,
boat.
commitment now.
We're
It's
calling
in.
it. Are we,
Okay.
Dave? You came up with
Yeah. It's. I just threw it out there loosely, but there was no protests, and I just saw the first gannets of the season while surfing the other day, soaring down the line on a blue water swell, and the two wingtips sort of teetering over, and it was just like, oh wow, look at that, just like a Warren cat, the two tips, and just speed, easy speed.
The wandering
It's like,
seabird.
Yeah, the wandering seabird. The gannet, yeah. So it's great. Torren's built that as a place, and I love that you have that experience of people who are voyaging, having a way for people to tune in and see where that boat is at, and if they could participate or if the boat could be useful to people, especially like thinking of the citizens group. They're doing census work, they're doing mapping, reef mapping in parts of the world where you would think there'd be already lots of understanding, like the Great Barrier Reef. So little of that reef is understood, though it is going through huge changes right now. So having a boat like this that can access those places, because you can be under sail, you don't need mountains of fuel, you don't need mountains of money even. You can have this boat going into these shallow water locations, which a lot of the really struggling reef systems are, in shallow hot water and being bleached or destroyed by storm activity and stuff. So this is actually like a real application of using this boat and it being purposeful. And so that is a really fun idea, and just thinking that, that you need some sort of, I guess, presence in the internet for people to be able to tune in with that and see how they could be involved is really exciting. It's cool. think it's a great way to communicate what's going on with a boat like this and with groups and communities, you know, in these remote locations. And yeah, it's exciting.
I think having that interactive page where people can kind of follow along and we can all contribute to it, write in photographs and kind of update it semi-regularly. Like every so often there's plenty already that we've got just to kind of, you know, leak into it. And
I found your Substack, Aiyana, and it's so cool. You're such a beautiful writer. You had such an adventurous life on a boat as a child. Do you have a sense of wanting to recreate that for Naya? Like, is there that longing for her to experience what you experienced, or is it a different feeling than that?
A bit of both. I think I'm really excited for Naya to have the life that I think she's going to have. And there is so much nostalgia for me with boats. It's going to be amazing to have it all come full circle, and especially to bring my parents on board with her. And my dad's always been his dream has been to sail the world, but they've been working their whole lives too. They didn't have the same opportunities that we have to do all of this weird stuff that we're doing. And so it's going to be pretty sweet and emotional, I think, to sail with Naya and with them.
Thanks for listening with us today. If you liked what you heard, please consider sharing an episode with a friend. Our editor this season is the multi-talented, absolute legend, Ben Jake Alexander. The soundtrack was composed by Shannon Sol Carroll, with additional tunes from the very talented Kai McGilvray. We have a few new Water People experiments this season. You can find every episode of the podcast on our Water People YouTube channel, or you can subscribe to our very infrequent newsletter and get book recommendations, questions we're pondering, and behind-the-scenes glimpses into recording the podcast, and more, via our website, waterpeoplepodcast.com. As usual, we'll be continuing today's conversation on Instagram, where we're at Water People Podcast.